I downgraded to the iPhone 17 Pro. Now, I'm not the kind of guy that would buy the Pro. I've always bought the Max, I've always owned the Ultras or the XLs for whatever device I was choosing to cover or use personally. However, last year I fell in love with a phone that I wouldn't have expected. Google asked if I wanted to take a look at the Pixel 9 Pro, and I did. And if it wasn't for needing to stay on top of trends and having to cover other devices, that phone would have stayed in my pocket for a little bit longer, mostly because I felt like the size was perfect. It blended a lot of what I would consider to be pro features into something that was compact, easy to deal with in my day-to-day, and it was genuinely just an eye-opener, making me realize some of the things that I thought would be drawbacks, like the smaller battery, were kind of just an amplified delusion. Now, I've used the 17 Pro Max pretty much since it came out, and I started using the S26 Ultra. And once again, I've been kind of romanticizing having this kind of power in a smaller form factor. Unfortunately though, there's no S26 Ultra Mini. So I picked up an iPhone 17 Pro and I've been living with it for the last little bit and I want to talk about it. Okay, so I picked up the 17 Pro Max. Oh, not the Pro Max. I picked up the 17 Pro. So I have my 17 Pro Max right here. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually kind of hyped because like I've been a really big proponent for like these big phones for so long. It's all I've ever bought. Google sent the Pixel 9 Pro, and ever since Google sent the Pixel 9 Pro, I have not wanted to actually use these bigger phones. I've been kind of like reminiscing back to when I would carry that device around. It would feel so like small in my pocket. It was just something that was so easy to use with one hand, and it didn't feel like I was carrying like the weight of 1,000 suns everywhere I went. Anyways, let's start with like unboxing this thing. Boom. Look at that. Oddly enough, it's actually really similar to the S26 Ultra's Cobalt Violet. I didn't think the deep blue would be that close to it. But yeah, immediately like right off the bat, this is like a pretty drastic difference. See, I've come to the realization that I'm not a power user. With nearly every phone that I've used in the last little while, things like battery have been a non-issue. The size of the display has been nice for consuming content, but it's also been a little more cumbersome than I would like to admit. See, I have pretty small hands. Something like the Ultra or the Pro Max for me are mostly two-handed phones. And I'll be honest, for me, they're pretty bulky. One-hand typing when on the go has been a little bit frustrating, with me always having to find the best way to balance the phone on my pinky or just do some crazy finger gymnastics. And ever since using the Pixel 9 Pro, the thought of bringing that weight back and the added hassle has always just been at the back of my mind. But could I seriously daily a smaller device? Could I get used to it? And would I ultimately end up preferring something like this? Or would I just go back to using the larger devices that I'm so used to and fry my retinas every single day? Now, before we go further though, I just want to say thank you guys so much for being here. We are very close to 100,000 subscribers, which is just insane to me. So if you want to be part of the group of people that help put a plaque on the wall behind me, I would really appreciate it. And I can't thank you guys enough for actually being here and supporting me, because it means the absolute world. Anyways, I want you to hear me out. Aside from just wanting a device that's a little more comfortable, there's actually been a little bit of a darker side to this. I'm not a power user in the sense that I don't use a ton of different apps. I don't use this phone to film all of my content, and I don't really run my business off of the iPhone. However, I do use it for social media, whether it's posting, keeping up with what's going on, staying connected with all of you, and obviously I use it as a phone to keep in touch with my friends and family. But I've been sort of like addicted to social media lately. I've been spending way too much time on my phone. I'm not like the kind of person that was like addicted to watching short form content, or like I never really had like a social media addiction. I did spend a lot of time on it because I do this stuff like for work, and like I keep track on things, but now I'm just finding that I'm wasting like a lot of time, like necessary time, on useless stuff, like scrolling through threads or watching Instagram reels, and like it's cooking my brain. I also feel like a big part of this is because of like, one, how big and like digestible these displays are. Like I can just carry basically a tiny movie theater in my pocket, have like amazing quality, I never have to leave bed, is what I'm trying to say. If I wanted to watch stuff, like usually I would just go to my desk before, watch some YouTube, but then this way at least like I'm up, like I'm kind of moving around, I'm at least getting like my day started in some capacity, but I feel like I'm just kind of like throwing my day away. And always having this large display staring at me, I felt like just made it easier to get lost in everything. And I have been wasting hours out of my day doing nothing but just watching using slop because admittedly, I have no self-control. So I was wondering, if I downsized, would I feel the impact of the drawbacks or would some of them weigh in my favor? And this is where it actually kind of gets interesting. Firstly, I do want to talk about the form factor because the 17 Pro versus the 17 Pro Max is very noticeable. It's a 27 gram difference, which is a 13% reduction in weight. Now, the phone is also much smaller, obviously, to the point where one-handing it goes from an almost impossible feat for me to something that I can comfortably do on the 17 Pro, even when using a case. But I think the thing that I didn't necessarily think about when it comes to the 17 Pro was the density. You basically have all the same stuff crammed into this smaller chassis, which is shorter and not as wide, making it feel ultimately way more balanced in the hand. It doesn't feel top heavy, it doesn't get too tiring to hold for long periods, and overall, I've come to really enjoy this over the larger Pro Max iPhone. Even picking up the Pro Max or the S26 Ultra after having used this for just a few days now is kind of wild. Like, this feels gargantuan, and I actually don't know how this is the size of device that I've been using for years. I thought typing on the smaller display would be somewhat of a challenge with the smaller keyboard and all, but it doesn't really seem like anything's actually changed for me personally. However, one thing I noticed was that it was easier to use things like the control center or use the notification panel, as well as just navigate the entire phone as a whole. And as a daily carry, even pairing it with something like this wallet stand, which holds a couple of my cards on top of using a case, it didn't feel like it was too much for me, when on the Pro Max, I kind of just wanted to keep the phone naked to save the weight and bulk. Same thing goes for how this thing feels in the pocket. Since it's smaller, it sits a little bit deeper, and I'm not constantly worrying about whether it's going to slip out on me when I'm in like the car or in a chair. And overall, it's just been less intrusive in my daily life, which is something that I could actually really appreciate. The best thing about the 17 Pro though is that the only drawback versus the 17 Pro Max, aside from the display size realistically, is the battery. They both actually have the same pixel density at 460 pixels per inch, which is incredibly sharp. They both use 120 Hz LTPO Super Retina XDR displays. They both have a peak brightness of 3000 nits when outdoors, and they both use that new ceramic shield too, which is actually really good at avoiding micro scratches. This year though, both the 17 Pro and Pro Max actually have the exact same camera setup, which is very important to me and is one of the reasons why I started leaning toward the Pro Max in the beginning anyways, as previously the smaller iPhone was pretty much stunted when it came to things like the zoom range. And fortunately, I'm not using a 2TB iPhone. I don't ever need that much storage on my device, but I say fortunately because the only iPhone with a 2TB option is the Pro Max version, with the regular Pro capping out at 1TB. And when it comes to the battery, which I would say is realistically the only drawback to actually using this device, it's not as big of a difference as you might think. Now, it does go from 5088 milliamp hours on the Pro Max down to 4252 on the Pro. And yeah, like, this is going to make an impact on you if you're someone that plays a lot of games or you do really intensive, stressful tasks on your phone like photo editing or video editing, and you just happen to be away from a charger. Another thing though is because of the smaller size, it is actually harder for the heat to dissipate as quickly as it does on the Pro Max. So I will say this phone does get a little bit warmer at times, though it's nothing that I'm actually concerned about. The thing is though, I do find myself near a charger more frequently. I mean, I work from home and I use Apple CarPlay in my car over the wire, and I've never even been close to killing this phone after a full day. Just like the Pro Max, it does support 40 watts wired charging, which isn't like the most insane thing that we have here in North America, but it is a big step up, and with the smaller battery, it does actually charge really quick on the 17 Pro. Though the part that I didn't expect with this phone was the social media side of things. Remember when I said that I was wondering if downsizing would change the way that I actually use my device and hopefully make me use it less? Well, it kind of did. Not in some dramatic, like this phone is the key to a digital detox kind of way, but the smaller display does make content less immersive. And I know that sounds like a negative, but for me, it's actually been a positive thing. When I'm scrolling TikTok or Instagram Reels on a display that's like almost 7 inches, it's very easy for me just to get lost in it and absorbed in what I'm doing. Everything is bigger, it feels more engaging, and boom, literally an hour of my life has just disappeared. Now, on the 17 Pro, which is still a totally usable display, obviously, it's just a little less substantial, and I'd say that honestly makes it a little harder to get lost in. That tiny bit of friction though actually helped me put my phone down a little more often and just focus on the things that were in front of me, which even though I did hope for it, and it very well could just be a placebo, I didn't actually expect that to come from downsizing. Yeah, when I bought this phone, I was sort of fantasizing more about the form factor. I liked the idea of getting what the bigger device has, but just in a smaller, more compact chassis. But at the end, what I ended up getting was something that felt a little more intentional to use. And even though I like phones, I review phones, and it's the majority of what I talk about on here, I also don't want my phone to consume every waking second of my life. Now, all of that doesn't mean that the 17 Pro is perfect. There are definitely things that I do miss from the 17 Pro Max or even the Ultra when it comes to those devices. And as stupid as this sounds, the display is one of them. There's a reason these larger devices have become more popular. They're perfect to travel with. You basically have close to an iPad mini in your pocket, so you could watch things like YouTube videos or movies on an airplane. You can have a larger screen for viewing documents. And one of my favorite uses for these phones have been using it as an external camera monitor, where having a larger display actually does make a big difference. Though personally, I think what I've been enjoying with the 17 Pro so far has actually been outweighing the downsides. But I will be taking this phone with me to Japan for a couple of weeks. I leave in, just a few days actually. And this is the only phone that I'll be taking with me. So if you want to come along and watch a week in the life of the 17 Pro while I'm in Japan, where I go through a little more detail, just make sure to get subscribed to the channel. And also, probably good idea if you turn on the post notification bell. Anyways though, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to spend more time with this. I'll report back to you what I think about it, if I decide to switch back, or if this just becomes the main phone that I use. And if you made it all the way through, consider dropping a turtle emoji down in the comments below so I know who the real ones are. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.